Bitcoin looks like it has all the potential to rally to considerably higher highs this cycle. But looking at the underlying data, do we really have the fuel to even reach $200,000? Today we're going to be looking at whether Bitcoin can realistically hit $200,000 this bull cycle, and where better to start than the long and short-term holders chart we have here on BitcoinMagazinePro.com. Now, the way that we're going to be looking at this is, well, looking at the market dynamics of BTC. What really drives prices higher? It's simple supply and demand economics. If we're seeing the supply decrease or stay the same and demand increase, we should see price increasing. And how do we really determine what demand and supply is? Well, we can look at how much new BTC is being accumulated by new market participants or short-term holders, and the supply that is actually distributed from these long-term holders. So looking at this chart, we can see over the past few months in this cycle, really, Bitcoin's long-term holder supply topped out after a little bit of consolidation we had in 2024 at around 16.12-ish million BTC held by these long-term holders. Now, we're defining long-term holders as those that have held BTC for a period of 155 days or more. And this is due to the fact that beyond that, holders are considerably more likely to be holding for an extended period of time. Beneath that, we usually see more frequent intra-cycle trading, etc. But really, the influence that we really see on the market is from these long-term holders taking profit or accumulating BTC. And right now, as I film this, we're at about, well, beneath 14.5 million BTC. So we've seen a fairly substantial amount of BTC, about 1.6 million moved. We can see here by the short-term holder supply, these are basically just inverted lines on the chart here, that these short-term holders, potentially ETFs, institutional buyers, corporations like MicroStrategy, for example, are accumulating this BTC. They're gobbling up, and of course we can get into the discussion of whether they'll ever sell, etc. What we can do using this data is look at the influence this short-term holder accumulation has had on the underlying market cap and price of BTC. Of course, there's going to be some influence from short-term holders, people that have only held for a couple of weeks. But like I said, those that have been holding for an extended period of time usually are trying to play the big macro swings in the market and are usually trying to time the bottoms and tops a little bit more than those intra-cycle traders who are just trading every hour, every day, etc. So the way we can do this is by calculating what is known as the money multiplier effect. So many people may imagine that $1 inflow into the market. For example, if I bought $1 of BTC, it would increase the market cap of Bitcoin by about $1. But this isn't actually the case. And one really quick, simple way we can maybe try and guess what this money multiplier effect is by looking at how illiquid the supply of Bitcoin is. So if we look at something like the 1-year hodl wave, what we can see is if BTC hasn't been moved in over a year, then it's not very liquid. That's not really readily available to purchase. So here we can see on the Bitcoin 1-year hodl wave chart, this currently sits around 62%. That means about 38% of the BTC supply is actively available for trading. Let's just round that up to about 40%. What we can see is about 2.5 times the influence of the Bitcoin price action will come from that 40% that's available for trading. Multiply that up to 100%, about 2.5x. So $1 inflows, just looking at this, would influence the market cap by about 2.5x just due to the illiquidity of Bitcoin. Earlier in the cycle, this was even at 70%, so we can say about 30%. Again, let's just do some rough rounding to say $1 in would influence about $3 on the Bitcoin market cap. But we can go a step further. This is just one very basic way of looking at this. What we can actually do is try and calculate the money multiplier effect by looking at the influence of the market cap that this short-term holder from that chart we saw previously is having on price. So I'll just move myself over here. So what I've done here is look at the long-term holder supply of BTC, the short-term holder supply, the circulating supply, and the dollar inflows we've seen from short-term holders. We can assume that one BTC being transferred from a long-term holder to a short-term holder has that dollar amount inflow into the market. And then we can check the market cap increase following that to look at the money multiplier effect in action, and we can average that out over a 90-day period. So we're not just looking at 1 or 2 days, which can be massively influenced by different external factors. Once we get a full quarter's worth of data, we can average that out and say that it's probably going to be a little bit more actionable. So what we can see, if I just give it away and scroll down here, and then I'll zoom in so it's a little bit easier for you all to see. Currently, the money multiplier effect for BTC is at a value of around 6.73. So for every $1 we put into the market cap is actually increasing by about $6.73. Now what we can do is input a desired price of BTC. So for this example, I've just put $200,000. So we can see the current market cap of Bitcoin above $2 trillion, and the desired market cap would be about $4 trillion. Makes sense, practically doubling in price. So the difference in that is, again, about $2 trillion. What we can do is take the adjusted difference in that, so factoring in that money multiplier effect of 6.73, so we can reduce this difference in the current and desired market cap. And then what we need to do is do a little bit of rough maths. If we just kind of assume that the average accumulation price between, for example, $100,000 and $200,000 is about $150,000, that'd be the average price of BTC being transferred. I know that's not an exact science, but from that, what we can say is the amount of BTC that would need to be moved for this amount of adjusted market cap increase is about 1.9 million Bitcoin. So what we can say is that would have an influence, given the current value of the long-term holder supply of Bitcoin. It would reduce that to about 12.6 million. So if we just go back to this chart here, as I filmed this is about 14.5, we'll just round up. But as we're wanting to move nearly 2 million BTC from long-term holders to short-term holders, this would take the long-term holder supply of BTC to about 12.6 million, which is that realistic? Can we actually imagine a scenario where this amount of BTC is changing hands? Well, what we can do is, if I just reload so I can draw on the charts here, we can see a little bit of a trend of diminishing cyclical nature in this metric. We're seeing less and less Bitcoin being transferred from long-term holders to short-term holders every single cycle. So what I can do is, if I just roughly draw, I've already drawn it, but if I just draw it again, if I roughly draw on this chart something like this, what we can see is, just looking at the previous cycles before our latest one, there was a pretty noticeable trend line in this data where we could see, if I just move this way a little bit, where this bottomed out, the maximum amount of BTC that had been transferred from long-term to short-term holders, and that trend line we saw in the double peak cycle matched up pretty nicely with the 2017 cycle. And then the previous cycle didn't really follow that trend line, but if we were to do something like that, then it doesn't really make sense going forward. So if we just assume that we were to hit this trend line again somewhere in around 2026, I know this is not an exact science, it'd probably take us to somewhere around here. So if I just look at this peak here, this is around 13 million BTC. So if we are to follow this trend, then we may only get about 13 million long-term holder supply of BTC. So 12.6 may be a little bit of a stretch. So what I can do is just change this desired price to say $150,000, and that looks a little bit more obtainable. What we can see is that would only require a long-term holder supply of BTC to be around 13.3, 13.4 million. If I just increase this again to about 160,000, we'll go up one more, 170,000. We can see this takes us to about that 13 million BTC threshold, but anywhere above $150,000 would align with that trend line quite nicely if we are to follow that. But $200,000 requiring a transfer of a little bit more than that, if we just go back here to see this, an amount of about we'll round up 12.6 million BTC. Would that be possible? Well, we can see in the previous cycle, it reached a low of about 12.1 million BTC. So we would still make a diminishing return, if you like, on this data point. It would see a top somewhere around here, which would come slightly beneath that trend line, but is still very much within the realms of possibility. So yeah, I think realistically, especially considering this money multiplier number is differing every single day, essentially, as we calculate this, but could we go even higher than $200,000? Let's assume we were to reach what we reached in the previous cycle of about 12 million BTC held by these long-term holders, which I think could be realistic, just taking into consideration the institutional inflows we're seeing, a potential Bitcoin strategic reserve gobbling up 1 million BTC. So what I can do is just scroll down here and say, what if we wanted this to be about 12 million Bitcoin? Where if I change the desired price to $250,000, that'd give us about this 12 million BTC long-term holder supply, which may not be the most realistic expectation, I guess, for this cycle, but definitely within the realm of possibility. What we can also do is look at something, if we're going to go really crazy with it, what we reached in the cycle prior to the previous one, so about 9 million, we'll say, long-term holder Bitcoin supply. What we can do is come back here and just increase this desired price to see the current impact of that. So I go to 500,000, we can see 8.8, 8.9, pretty much aligning with what we had in the previous 2017 cycle. So if we do see an astronomical amount of BTC move, another 5.6 million BTC transferring hands and accumulated by short-term holders, then I guess 500, in fact, that's 5 million, isn't it? $500,000, even more realistic. There we go. It'd only require about 10.6 million BTC and 1 million Bitcoin just for fun. would, be about 9.7 million BTC on the long-term hold at supply. So all of these, while not realistic, and I guess impossible if we're seeing nation states begin adopting this and huge mega corporations like BlackRock continuing to buy tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin. But realistically, I think beyond that $150,000 point is where we should be focusing. $200,000 definitely seems possible. $250,000 is currently what I would say is the upper limit of what is realistic, but who knows? The changing supply and demand economics of the market are constantly evolving, and as we can see with the money multiplier effect constantly changing as well, at some point this could increase to a 10x, and the amount of BTC needing to change hands and be accumulated by short-term holders would diminish dramatically. Also, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. And make sure to check out all the resources we've discussed today, as well as the many more that are all available on BitcoinMagazinePro.com, your number one source for Bitcoin analysis. So just to summarize, the Bitcoin money multiplier effect looks to currently be at a value of around 6.73x, looking at the amount of BTC that was transferred from long-term to short-term holder and the market cap increase we've seen in relation to that. That indicates that for every $1 of inflow we see into the market cap increases by about $6.73. Although do keep in mind that this figure is constantly evolving, it's fluctuating every single day, upwards, downwards, so while we're looking at this right now, if we were to do this analysis in a few weeks' time, it would probably be slightly different. What we can see is the supply of Bitcoin moving from long-term holders to short-term holders has recently decelerated, a point I didn't even really mention here, but over the past few days and weeks, especially as Bitcoin has stabilized and had a little bit less volatility following our big explosive move initially above $100,000, we are seeing long-term holders be less willing to transfer their BTC, potentially waiting for considerably higher prices, which does make sense. And looking at historical norms, what we could see in the trend line from that long-term holder supply, we're likely to get overheated once we surpass about $150,000 just looking at the current data. But what we can say is $200,000 is definitely possible. $250,000 is where I'd say the upper possibility territory is. Beyond that, we'd really have to break some historical patterns we've seen in data like this one. But realistically, anything could happen. Like we were saying, market dynamics are ever evolving. And given the situation in the US and potential game theory we'll see in action with other nations wanting to accumulate BTC, maybe we're all underestimating this and considerably higher prices are a possibility in this super cycle. If you like this video, then please visit BitcoinMagazinePro.com, where our analytics help you to cut through the noise to make data-driven, informed decisions about Bitcoin. I got that slightly the wrong way around. With over 150 live chats, personalized indicator alerts, in-depth crypto industry reports, API access, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. And let me know what your thoughts are on Bitcoin's realistic possibility of reaching $200,000 or potentially even higher or lower. As I said, let me know in the comments below and on social media. I look forward to reading and replying to them. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.